Welcome to the EV Ready podcast, featuring industry leaders and their perspectives on electrification, hosted by EV Ready Energy. Hey everybody, welcome to the EV Ready podcast. I am grateful today to have on Amy Dobrikova, VP of Fleet Solutions at Rexel Energy Solutions, and Ben Burcham, National Director of EV Charging. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I like I was telling you guys, I really was excited to just do this podcast with you. It was going to be one of the more laid back ones, just because we know each other too well. But just for context for everybody, Rexel Energy Solutions is one of EV Ready's most trusted partners in the EV charging space, just because we know that they know their stuff. They've been in the industry for a long time, and so it's always a better end user experience when we're working together. I think where I'd like to start, Ben and Amy, maybe if you can kick this one off first, is related to what is a distributor, and then what did Rexel Energy Solutions see in EV charging that caused to make such a large investment several years ago in the EV charging space? I think a lot of people just don't really understand the value of a distributor within, the value chain in EV charging.
Yeah, I always worked direct for manufacturers. So coming over to the distribution side, it's like the light bulbs are turning on, and why don't more companies work through distribution? So Rexel Energy, is under Rexel USA. We do about $5 billion in the US, $20 billion globally. So as a distributor, we distribute everything from transformer, switchgear, conduit, pipe, wire, etc. And then Rexel Energy Solutions was really focused on energy efficiency, so lighting and HVAC. And about 6+ years ago, the president saw the future of EV charging and brought in a very large charging partner and started launching. And now we're doing a ton of business in the EV charging space. And kudos to Ben and his team for expanding that EV across the country.
Cool. And Amy, your background was in the EV charging industry previously. Ben, you were the same, coming from a different direction. Ben, you've been at RES since probably about the beginning of the EV charging portion of the business, right?
Yeah. So 2020, early 2020. So it was Paul Machard and Chris Monison, who was the president at the time. National Grid came to them. They were coming out with a big program, and we're like, RES, which Rexel Energy, we call it RES, so I call it RES. That's what I'm referring to. I partnered with them on a lot of programs like lighting and HVAC, and they kind of said, hey, you need to get into this. We want partners like you. And that kind of kickstarted them looking at it. And then they made the call to make the investment, and they hired a bunch of dedicated people within the industry, me being one of them. And I had worked in channel before, so I'd worked the charge point for 4 years. I always joke that I did 4 years of charge point, got my bachelor's degree in EV charging. And then now I've been at Rexel Energy for 4.5 years. And my background was channel anyway. So I was doing very similar things, but to Rexel Energy, who had these amazing ESCOs or VARs, whatever you want to call them from an industry standpoint, amazing ones that I got to start working with, getting them in the EV division. And that's the back of our partnerships is kind of where we grew, and we're now the largest. I feel like it's been quick, but long at the same time, but we've definitely doubled down every time that we've had like another second wind, third wind, and we've always doubled down on it. So
Ben, question for you, because I've talked to Amy about this in the past. So when I worked for the charging vendors, I didn't value distribution initially. I didn't really understand why distribution was important. I had a number to hit, and It was attainable to hit by myself, and so I didn't really feel the need to scale. Did you use distribution when you were working for the vendor?
Yeah, I actually I was the one that said we need to separate VARs and distribution and treat them differently. So I felt like the way you work with the VAR and the way you worked, we were treating distribution as VARs, and they bring a whole different set of values. I also the message at the same vendor that we worked with, the message was, hey, you need to really start building out your channel and partnerships. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get your quota eventually, because the quotas kept going up and territories were shrinking. So it was true, but it wasn't just, people weren't thinking a year in advance, but there were some people that were. And seeing that, you also worked on some specialized areas where I would say, even as a channel person, I understood manufacturers going direct. So there was also, if you rewind back to when I first started at ChargePoint in 2015, distribution weren't that interested in charging stations. There were a couple, but the market hadn't really generated that much that it required a lot of attention. It was kind of a distraction, and I understood that. The market needed to be built, and that was direct to VARs or direct to customers. So it was kind of the market needed to be built before that could come in. So I understood it, even as a channel person, to create the market, and it actually creates a successful channel environment anyway. And then I felt like there was a substantial change at one point where it's outgrowing ChargePoint, and then they needed to lean in. And I think it's all about a timing, and then it had to be worthwhile for distribution to come in. So it's a balance, and then sort of new vendors that are coming in are coming into an area where distributors care. And so it's a little easier for newer vendors that are coming into the market or coming from different markets into the United States. Distribution cares now versus it was really hard to care 8 years ago.
Yeah, I think this is a very selfish comment on my end, but when I realized I need to start working with Rexel was when I worked with a charging vendor and my quota got so high that I knew I just couldn't hit it by myself.
Yeah. And that's kind of the scale was that tilted. And the commentary kept saying, it's coming, you're going to have to build it. Otherwise, people procrastinate and so forth. And to be honest, probably the standard of partners, the distribution and that wasn't necessarily at a high level. So there was a little teething issues for say yourself. It was a little harder to work through channel. These days, very different. I found actually finding lighting companies coming to us looking to diversify. What we didn't realize were they were the lighting companies that the other lighting companies were kind of beating up on, and the large lighting ones that we work with at Rexel Energy, they were the prime, really good resellers, and they're now coming to the market, and they're just a different level, and that's what's exciting. We have just some fantastic ESCOs here at Rexel Energy that we partner with. They weren't interested in the market 5 years ago either. And I don't blame them, because they were just crushing it at their core competency, and it's all timing.
And I think that's my second question for you. So I think this idea of channel building channel, obviously you're working with customers like EV Ready, and we have a certain value set, but then there are other types of customers that you probably more traditionally work with that are in other areas. In first question for you, Amy, is what is talk about the channel building the channel and the different types of companies that you're working with and how you're helping them get into the EV charging space.
So, we are agnostic as far as hardware. I'm specifically focused on fleet, so working with commercial, government, federal fleets that are tasked with electrifying. And so the more partners, there's so many people that touch fleet. It's the dealers, it's the upfitters, it's the contractors, there's so many angles, the service partners. Really, it's working with all of them and educating all of them so that we're all in this together to make it easier on the end user who is transitioning to electric. I started my career 16 years ago on the vehicle side. At the time, it was what vehicles are available to purchase their electric, and then moving to the infrastructure, right? And here we are, fast forward, and we've got all of them going. And everybody has a touch point at this point. And so having value partners that are aligned with the vision and supporting the end user at the end of the day is what matters.
Yeah, Ben, same question for you when you're on the commercial side. And if you can speak to the different partners that Rexel works with.
So to sort of echo Amy, there are different audiences. Customers is a general term, but there's different audiences. So we work with our ESCOs, or VARs is the industry name for them. We call them partners, but they're an audience. And then we have the end customers who's putting the charging station on their property. And then we have actual own and operators that are putting the charging stations on somebody else's property. So in terms of how we add value, it depends on the audience. But then also, if we want to just talk about ESCOs and VARs, I would say Rexel Energy has a broad list of value adds that we can add, but every single ESCO and every single VAR is different. So some need more of a logistics help, tight rollouts. We've done some rollouts that are really sort of quick, fast, all over the country, staging equipment, so on and so forth. Then we have other rescos that are transitioning to EV. They need our help with training their staff and retooling their staff. I'll use EV Ready as an example. You don't need me to train you on EV. I think most of our value add, there's a lot of logistics in there, but it's probably spitballing business ideas is one thing. And it's like, what am I seeing in the market that you guys don't have the vantage point on? What do I see? And sort of spitballing that, and then resources. We have resources to sort of potentially, amp you guys up so that we can go chase business together. So what I'd say is every single one's different. I ask a lot of questions of our partners to figure out where they have a need and then where we can add value, because every single one's different. I think we're not lacking in value adds from marketing. So Lindsay Thompson, like one of the best marketers I've seen, smaller companies coming in. One, we've had so much experience going out after rebate programs. We know what campaigns look like, right? And what are successful. We can sort of put you through the shortcut so you don't go down rabbit holes that we went down. And then we've also been doing EV for 5 years. So we understand what marketing campaigns are there. So we can touch all over the business in terms of adding value. What I don't like doing is just moving boxes for someone. If that's what we do is like a core part of our, logistics is just moving boxes, it doesn't feel like a fit. We like to add more.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And just like for the audience, like from our perspective, like Ben said, like our team doesn't really need the education on EV because we came from the center of the industry. So we understand it very well. Like where we really work with Rexel is on the operation side and making sure that operations of procurement of charging solutions is running smoothly, especially for like larger programs across the United States where RES has warehouses across the US where they can stock stations. Amy will get into the parts piece in a second, but just from a customer experience perspective, like all the things that you would take for granted that should go well. I think that's how we use you guys. But if you're a company that is more focused on, maybe you're focused on energy efficiency, maybe you're traditionally focused on just performing installations, RES has built like a team that will provide the expertise on the EV charging side that'll be able to help you as well. So yeah, Amy, you go. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say, I love that, Rexel's a large company, but Rexel Energy, we can operate very entrepreneurial. So a lot of our customers will come to us with their challenges, their pain points. We may be going in to sell them chargers and they're coming back and saying, hey, we need help with this, and this. We get our team together, we strategize, and then we come up with a solution. Having such a large footprint across the nation, we really can support them with putting the hardware where they need it the most for quick uptime and reliability of the charger. So
yeah. And I think we have such a large team. We've been doing it for a long time. We do a ton of projects that sometimes people are coming to us with challenges that we've already seen before. That's where our experience really starts kicking in because, we've kind of lived through it. And I think Amy kept saying education. I think that's the key thing, is the education point of view on an industry that has low education, a lot of noise and a lot of confusion. If we can just straight up educate, whether it's an end customers, whether it's our value add resellers that we're helping sort of educate on what's going on and what we're seeing, sort of allow them to not go down that path that, we already know that's not the right path to go down, and we can use it live examples is super useful for people, and it can save a ton of money, a ton of time, and that's just part of sort of working with someone that's seen a lot of it.
Yeah, I think that's another unique piece is a lot of companies out there, they kind of view it as a plug in the wall, like this commoditized plug in the wall. And I think we all know it's a moving target. There's risk of investment obsolescence. There's risk of, what I always say, utility economics, which is obviously something that EV Ready focuses on. But it really is important to have a team that can slow down the moving target. And I think you guys have set it up that way for companies that might not be as involved in the space on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Ben, obviously you've had a long journey in the EV charging space. Kind of a general question for you. What do you look for in a charging solution in general to make sure that a customer has the right charging experience, where they're protected from investment obsolescence, where that the company's not going to stop supporting the charging solution? How would you guide people?
So from a VAR ESCO point of view, right? They want a charging solution that they partner with and go to market. So it's very similar values to us. versus the conversation with, say, an end customer. But so I look at it two different ways. So the product side of thing and the business side of things. So like from a product standpoint, you kind of touched on it, like reliability. What are their warranties? Like how hard do they stand behind it? Right, that says a lot. Innovation, how much they've invested in innovation. So if they've had a history of innovation, no one's got to knock it out of the park, every time. And you got to continue to innovate your product to stay relevant. But what's their innovation path? Future-proof mentality. That the strength of their software is a real big one for me. And then sort of just their history. There's history, whether it's the United States, whether it's Europe or whatnot, sort of gives you a more rounding picture of confidence on a product and a company that's invested in that, sort of just that product. And then I go into the business side of things. So are they in it for the long haul? There's some that are obviously coming to take on, say, market share and then sell and be gone, and how they go to market. So we sort of discuss this. Do they respect channel or only when it's convenient? Right? Because I wholeheartedly think if they're not doing that correctly, then they're going to struggle to have a future, right? If they're not respecting the channel and building it out, it creates confusion. It's not a good partner relationship, really. And then sometimes it's just a working relationship with people. The integrity they show, I think, one vendor, we tried to order 3 million in stock to get in front of lead times, and we were relatively new, and they came back and said, I think you should only order 1.5. And I was like, straight there, I was like, hey, this is a great working relationship. So little things like that, if they've got that integrity, they're going to look after the customer themselves. Sometimes it's the brand name. How much are they invested in their brand name, and what does bad customer experience means for them? And then the other one from a business, is there a need? Is there a need for their product? Is it really needed there? And are we bringing them to market, or are we going to the market together? Are they, completely relying on us? That's a hard-weighted partnership right there. So that's how I sort of look at products and vendors that we partner with. Because that partnerships are a big investment in time on our part. So, and then, differently, if you look at it like speaking to a customer, like bringing on a partnership, what I sort of talk to them today, talking about their choices, what do they need today and in 5 to 10 years time? So Christian was saying how they think of them as just plugs. It's, you kind of got to get them out of that mindset. I always ask what's important to them. And at times you need to tell them, because what's important to them is, I get this project done in 2 weeks. It's like, okay, right. As a customer, I respect that that's important to you, but like, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So education, which Amy says a lot as well, that's big on mine. Educate them on their choices, because they're going to make the decision. We're just going to make sure they make informed decisions. And I think a lot of the time, decisions are made on advice initially. And I think we have to put that in perspective, that it's a 10-year purchase. Sometimes the highest cost solution is the best value. I think that's such a corny line, but it rings true. But then sometimes it's not. Sometimes those features are just irrelevant and so forth. Education is big from an end customer point of view, and then going back to what's the right solution from a partnership point of view, sort of the product, the reliability, and then just the business, how we do business together.
And Amy, how would you answer that question? And with the context, Amy, that I'm gonna ask you about your past in a second. So yeah.
The question was on the hardware selection. Obviously, listening to the customer's expectations on what they're really truly wanting or needing. Reliability and uptime is critical, and everybody says they have the best uptime, and but do they really, right? We hear from the customers what works and what doesn't work, and I think that that's important to just be open and honest and listen to the customer. Provide recommendations with hardware that we stand behind. So any, manufacturer we onboard at Rexel, we stand behind what we sell. And so we want to believe that we're selling a quality product that works. And so at the end of the day, uptime reliability is the most important, especially from a fleet perspective, because if that charger isn't working, that vehicle isn't getting plugged in and filling up the battery and not able to do its job the next day, which is essential. So fleet is a critical asset. So that is my biggest focus, is quality and uptime.
And I think,
yeah, you go, Ben.
I was going to say as well, like education, 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 but we are also not afraid to tell them what we think they should do. And I think that's a big difference, because education's great. And then, sitting on the fence and saying, yeah, you could do this or you could do that. I think sometimes customers say, well, what should I do? Like, I love all that education. That's great. It's still spinning in my head. We're not afraid to tell them, this is what I think you should do. We'll support your decision, but this is what we think you should do. And I think the industry has less of that. And that's what, going to Amy's point, if we say we think they should do that, we back it too. If they go ahead and do that, like, we're going to back that choice.
There's a lot of yes men in an industry that feels really complicated, where you're just trying to sell, an extra line item. And yeah, that's important to get a recommendation, because it's chaos right now. It's a Wild West.
Can I do a weird sort of comparison?
Yeah.
So, and you and I have this, like, I have 3 kids now. When I had my first kid, it's education. My wife and I read so many books, and everyone sat on the fence. Well, you could do this, or you could do that. And we were at times we're like, give me a book that tells me what I should do. And I know it's like very broad to say this is what you should do in this situation when raising a kid or something like that. But we were more confused reading books than we were not reading books, and just gut feeling it and deciding ourselves what to do. But, we're both educated people in terms of went to university and so forth. So we felt the best way to do it is get a bunch of facts and a bunch of educations, and then we'll be in a good, position. But the education we were getting was extremely broad.
I saw a book being advertised to me on Facebook, and it was kind of like it was like a hardcover book, and it was like the 101 for EV charging. And the first thing I thought, I'm like, the industry's changing. Like, how can you have like a, one single book right now?
Totally. That's dated real quick.
Yeah.
Probably edition 10 will come out.
Yeah.
A year.
Exactly.
But like, I think of it the same. It's like, that's great. I could tell them all the things they could do, and give them a broad range of options. If they become just as confused, knowing more than what they get sometimes. So sometimes you've got to keep it precise and say, this is what, based on everything you've told me and what's important to you, this is what I think you should do.
Agreed. Amy, you have such an interesting past. I think it's kind of brought you to where you are today. Talk to us about your history on the automotive side and how it's kind of brought you into the EV fleet space. And then the second question for you is, like, what should fleet customers be primarily focused on, like, when they're first thinking about how they need to begin their electrification process?
Yeah, so I was fresh out of college and looking for that, career opportunity. And I had a chance to go work for a startup that was building a plug-in hybrid cargo van for fleets. And I said, what's a fleet? I didn't even know what a fleet was 16 years ago, right? And they pulled me over to the window, and they the office was on the 3rd floor over the highway. And they're like, you see that vehicle? That's a fleet. You see that vehicle? That's a fleet. And it was like, light bulb came on. We got to electrify fleets, right? And so my career started out with go interview the top 100, learn everything you can about them. How many miles they drive a day? Do they have ladder racks? Do they bump their head on the door? Literally, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning riding with commercial fleets to go do their job and interview the drivers. And that's how I got into fleet. And it was always team EV. 16 years ago, it was, CNG, propane, EV, what's the future? And it was always educating on EV. And obviously there's a place for every technology. But I really am team EV, and I do believe that is the best path. And now we're seeing it, right? So we're in the future, and we're still in the infancy as an industry. I do believe that. But you've got the manufacturers building EVs, you've got the infrastructure companies building, you've got financing partners. Incentives. There's more money out there than I've ever seen before. So there's no reason why we can't electrify in these times. And so, to answer your second question on fleets, just the uptime, reliability, selecting the correct hardware. I think they get overwhelmed maybe because there's so many out there right now. And I'm saying, take a breath. Let's look at what vehicles you have, what your plan is to convert. It always starts with call the utility. Whenever you're thinking about electrifying, the first thing you need to do is call the utility and get them on board and find out, right? Then call me and get the, site visits scheduled, and let's look at how much power you have. And there's lots of solutions out there. There's lots of financing partners out there that will help offset some of the cost. And so, as we've been saying this whole podcast, is we will work and educate in a very consultative approach to find the path to move forward so that it's not so overwhelming to electrify.
Yeah, I think like the fleet space is so interesting to me because it is the most complicated space that has the most challenging calculations to make and probably the most risk with car dealerships. I think like, for a lot of fleet operators though, this is part of their business, right? Like you want to calculate cost per mile. In the automotive space, it's not necessarily the case. They don't have that employee who has that line item for how much is EV costing us. And I think in the fleet space, at least on our end too, we get more requests, complex requests that are logical and make sense and are a lot of the right questions. But if you're an EV charging company out there, you really have to come prepared on the fleet side.
Absolutely. I mean, if that vehicle doesn't charge, that policeman isn't showing up, right? That your trash isn't getting picked up, the fireman isn't showing up. I mean, this is serious critical assets. Like it's definitely going to impact and you're going to feel it if the charger isn't working. Sorry, Ben.
I was going to say something. Amy, fresh out of college, it's your energy level is fresh out of college. I can't even imagine car out of college. That's next level. I love it so much. I think the other thing with fleet, like getting in the analytics and cost of fueling and all that sort of is one thing, but they're managing a fueling solution now on their property, which they haven't done before. So then the back end, there's something like how are you going to run that infrastructure? Not necessarily, from the car perspectives of how many miles and when they come in and the routing analysis, how are you going to run that with the rest of your building? Like that's new to fleet managers. So the software side of thing becomes a really big part of that conversation as well. And then, I think most conversation starts with that uptime, as Amy keeps saying, because it's all for nothing if it doesn't work. Who cares about the back end? Who cares about that other than the alerts when it goes down? But super important. But that software, and we're seeing a lot of fleet specialized software.
Yeah.
Which is great. And completely needed.
It is, especially with the utility economics component that I think, in general, the industry completely ignores. So, Amy, tell me, and this is a question for both of you. Amy, first, tell me about RES is innovating in the EV charging side because you see everything from all the angles because of the position that you're in, very unique position in the industry. So talk to me about what RES is doing to innovate in the EV charging space.
I mean, a lot of, working with our ESCOs and bars and our customers and users, we're hearing a lot of their pain points. And so, as a company, we're really working on solutions that are going to solve for those pain points. For me, it's uptime, right? And reliability of the chargers. And we are putting together a nice program that's really going to support the end user on that and give them access to what they're going to need for strong, reliable chargers. I love that we're entrepreneurial and we're getting into solar and energy storage and really doing really well with that. And Ben can speak a little bit more on that feature there.
Yeah, Ben, what's your take on it?
Yeah, we're always, I guess we're always having exciting new things in EV in general. It's just, that's kind of a day-to-day thing for us. But like battery storage is something that we've invested in for the last couple of years in terms of vendors, who we're going to go to market with software. I think it's going to play a huge part in the EV infrastructure rollout. It's a necessity and it's infancy stage. And I think what we've done with EV is what we're going to do with battery storage in terms of bringing it to the market. I'm excited to be part of it because there's a huge need for customers. And I think people are procrastinating it because there's such an importance and I guess rush to get EV charging stations out, either from a fleet perspective, municipality or workplace or multifamily because of leases. People are just sort of rushing to get that out there, and battery storage is kind of an afterthought. We're trying to make it easy to add that to projects and not make it feel like we're just building this mountain out of an anthill or whatever you want to call it. We're trying to make that pretty seamless to do both on a project. And I think how we're going to market with EV and the partners we've partnered with, we're gonna be able to offer that as well. So I'm excited about that. Again, the market's maturing, but it's going to be one of those real quick sort of hockey stick as well as people battle utility rates and so forth and challenges with power out there.
And so for Amy, like obviously station support is a major issue in this industry, and that's only going to be like exacerbated as the industry continues to standardize. There's really going to be more of a focus on the relationship between the charging vendor, how the software communicates with the charging vendor, and then the relationship between that hardware vendor and whatever support mechanism that they use. And obviously a standardization occurs and there's more of a fragmented market over time. That's a huge issue that someone needs to solve. So that's great to hear. And then Ben, obviously we're going to be working closely related to the battery storage piece. You know how passionate I am about some of the concerns for that. So the Car Dealership Guy podcast that we were on, that was a heavy focus of it. The inconvenient truth of EV charging. And I think that energy management piece is obviously, it's cool to hear that Rexel is going to jump into that. I guess I already knew it, but it's exciting to hear you say it on a podcast that's going out to the public.
I love the way you put that, the inconvenient truth, because, car dealerships, we sympathize with them that it was a lot put on them to get infrastructure out in a tight turnaround time. Focusing on a larger picture was difficult for most. And, we feel as them being our customers and customers of our customers that we're obligated to let them know about battery storage and the benefits of it and the risks of not looking into it. But it's very hard to do when they've got so much on their plates. And at the end of the day, they want to sell cars. Right? This infrastructure play is difficult. So we sympathize with them, but we kind of want to flag it to them and say, hey, we're here when you need us.
Yeah.
Especially with you guys, right? So
yeah. Yeah. Well, look, Ben, you've been in the industry for too long, and Amy, and so with a specialization in fleet. So Amy, if you can answer this first, and then Ben, help people understand if they want to have a relationship with Rexel Energy Solutions in this space, what should they do?
Reach out immediately, and we'll be here for you. We'll see where you're at in your journey, and we'll walk with you as we walk through the journey together.
Yeah, same. So reach out. I think we can get contact details to you, Chris, either directly to me. And I mean, we've got a pretty large team, and we probably have someone that's perfectly suited to work with within our team, whether that's me or part of the team or Amy. We love helping, and if that's an end customer or a contractor or a buyer that really wants to get into this space, if it's someone that wants to learn more, we have a lot of webinars as well, so we can put you on our distribution list. So we try the best to educate in the masses, but if you want more specific, please reach out.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to put both your contacts in the link when the podcast is released so that anybody can reach out to either of you if they want to. Awesome. Well, thank you both for the time. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, mate. Thanks.
Awesome.